I'm going to be arrested for social media posts criticizing Israel. And after I publicized the fact that I was being charged for social media posts criticizing Israel, the police have responded by saying I'm harassing the police.
Isn't that wild? So welcome to the show. This is What Else Is New. I'm your host, Kelly Green. And this was really, really new a few days ago. Yves has since been released from prison. Yves Engler, Canadian journalist and pro-Palestine activist, arrested earlier this week, or actually last week, Friday, I believe it was, he was arrested. And interesting about this is after he complained about the charges, the police laid a whole bunch more charges on that. Fresh out of the gate from that news was David Rovics with a new song.
Who is Dahlia Kurtz? It seems she mainly likes to post lies about what's happening in Gaza, the Holocaust that she denies. Yves Engler is a journalist, and who knows why it is.
Indeed. We're going to get to a remix of this song later on in the show. We'll play it out entirely. Meanwhile, I'll give you a quick little preview on what we're up to today. I'm going to go through a couple of dozen open tabs and try and find something that's new for us all. This one is for my friend Matthew. Microsoft unveils Majorana 1. Something about quantum computing, step in that right direction. I got a few different things regarding that. We got a Substack blog here, What Crisis? The invisible structures behind our crises and the tragic phases we all go through. So I'm going to touch on some of these phases that we go through. Another blog, I believe that the world is ending. Does that make me crazy? Do these pants make my ass look big? We'll get to Spank Mad later. There's the Montreal remix. I've got some more interesting stuff on Yves Engler arrests is from Sanya Nora and their daily news podcast from February 24th. Oopsie. Take that out. A little piece from Facebook when Yves was released. Another piece from when Yves was released. RCMP formally apologized for violating journalists' rights. Charlie Angus on never bending to tyranny. Okay, a call for new lines of conflict confronting the second Trump era. And this matches nicely with LA streets being patrolled. Oh, for Pete's sake, this keeps coming up with that Newport Folk Festival announcement. We've got some stickering activism, which is kind of fun. I got a piece from Robert Kennedy Jr. to share, and then a couple of real heavy-duty climate articles regarding methane leaks in the Arctic. Okay, so, and a few more. What else we got? Oh, yeah, we got economic blackout, economic blackout coming up. Guess what's coming up on February 28th? It's the economic blackout in the United States and Canada. Thank you, David, for that. Okay, moving right along. As I said, we're going to come back to Yves Engler. Just a quick little note. All of this stuff is linked down in the show description, so feel free to follow along there, find out the stuff that you want to dig a little deeper into, and click away. Maybe you too can have several dozen tabs open at once. So this is straight from the horse's mouth. The world's first quantum processor powered by topological qubits. Quantum computers promise to transform science and society. Today, we're announcing rapid advancements on the path to useful quantum computing. Majorana 1, the world's first quantum processing unit, QPU, powered by a topological core designed to scale to 1 million qubits on a single chip. Well, I don't know what that means, so we're going to go over to Quantum Insider, see if we can't find out a little bit more. Pardon my... Yes, okay, accept the cookies. Save my highlights. No. Dang it. So it leverages the world's first topoconductor, a breakthrough type of material that can observe and control Majorana particles to produce more reliable and scalable qubits, which are building blocks for quantum computers. In the same way that the invention of semiconductors made today's smartphones, computers, and electronics possible, topoconductors and the new type of chip they enable offer a path to developing quantum systems that can scale to 1 million qubits and are capable of tackling the most complex industrial and societal problems, Microsoft said. Whatever you're doing in the quantum space needs to have a path to 1 million qubits. If it doesn't, you're going to hit a wall before you get to the scale at which you can solve the really important problems. So I don't know what all this means, topological core, etc., etc. It sounds really important. My friend Matthew also thought it was very important to bring it to my attention. Thank you, Matthew, for continuing to watch the show and for your suggestions and tips and for your help with the lights. I got a slightly new lighting setup for today. Let me know what you think about that. Okay, this is from Wired magazine on the same subject. A couple pieces clipped out. 1 million qubits, which may be enough to realize many significant goals of quantum computing, such as cracking cryptographic codes and designing new drugs and materials. So there's always a nice little promise for this stuff. If Microsoft's claims pan out, the company may have leapfrogged competitors such as IBM and Google, who currently appear to be leading the race to build a quantum computer. While the Microsoft press release shows off something that is supposed to be quantum computing hardware, we don't have any independent confirmation of what it can do. Nevertheless, the news is very promising. So, sounds good, but it's something obviously we got to keep our eyes peeled on a little closer. All right. Crisis. What crisis? Asks Chusana Prazertkul. Trisana Prazertkul. Pardon me for butchering your name. Excellent little essay, but I want to focus in on 3 phases of awareness and how individuals respond to heightened risks. There's the pre-tragic phase, denial of crises, belief in minor fixes, lack of awareness of systemic issues. There is tragic phase, recognition of the severity of crises, feelings of despair and hopelessness, overwhelmed by systemic issues, which can cause one to revert back to the pre-tragic phase of denial. And then the post-tragic phase, integration of awareness, finding meaning in action, commitment to positive change. And then there's a little bit of a description of each of those. Phase 3, post-tragic. The post-tragic phase represents a transformation of consciousness where individuals integrate their understanding of the meta-crisis with a sense of agency and responsibility. Rather than succumbing to despair, people find meaning and purpose in contributing to solutions, however small. An individual in this phase might engage in community building, support regenerative agriculture, or advocate for systemic policy changes, embracing a more holistic approach to change. It's always good to get active in the face of despair, and that's what gives us hope, getting active. So we're going to touch a little bit more on that also later. Okay, here's a nice little piece, collapsemusings.com. The author's name escapes me. Alan, maybe? I believe the world is ending. Does that make me crazy? They wonder. It's a nice little essay. Goes through a background of where they were and how they came to become collapse aware. And here we are. In 2020, I started learning about climate change, peak oil, biodiversity loss, pollution, and more. By the end of the year, I was fully collapse aware. You can see it in higher prices, melting ice caps, dwindling oil reserves, the rise of fascism, declining living standards, record-breaking temperatures, the disappearance of forests, the drying up of aquifers, the collapsed biodiversity, the exponential growth of pollution, the ever-worsening natural disasters, the failure of green energy to replace fossil fuels, and so much more. But don't take my word for it. Listen to the experts. Ask the average climate scientist how they feel about what's going on, and most of them will admit that we're basically fucked. Even if there were no climate change, we would still be screwed due to peak oil, pollution, biodiversity loss, and resource depletion. All these things are part of the polycrisis, a collection of crises that amplify one another. If I had to convince you that we were doomed with only one word, it would be this: overshoot. Once you understand the concept of overshoot, you'll understand why collapse is inevitable. So no, despite what some people have told me, my warnings about collapse aren't just alarmism. They're rooted in facts, science, and the reality that we are breaching planetary boundaries. Maybe I do have a streak of alarmism, but that doesn't mean I'm wrong. That really hits close to home. I feel that very much. I may have an exaggerated reaction to risk and risk assessment. However, it doesn't mean that I'm wrong about the risks, that they are still there. Thanks for sticking around if you're still here. Be sure to drop that like.
I stab fucking bags of rice with a pencil.
My friend James, we miss him on the show. Hopefully we get him on next week for another episode of Who Cares. Very talented guy here. He's doing a Spank Mad character and some of the fun stuff on his channel. Montreal Remix. Okay, let's hear a little clip from Sandy and Nora from their daily news of February 24th, and they're speaking of the Yves Engler arrest and detainment from last Friday.
Starting in Montreal, activist and writer Yves Engler was arrested late last week on charges of harassment and obstruction of justice. Engler was taken into custody after a complaint from Zionist influencer Dalia Kurtz, who went to the police after he called her a genocide supporter on Twitter. Which, by the way, I mean, is totally true. She's super proud of how much she supports the state of Israel right now. Engler denied the allegations that he harassed Kurtz, saying that he's never contacted her beyond his comments on Twitter. In response to his arrest, the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute organized an action that involved 3,200 people calling the Montreal police to drop the charges against him. Alex Tyrell, the leader of the Green Party of Quebec, spoke to the Middle East Eye about Engler's arrest, calling it, quote, an attack on free expression and democratic rights, unquote.
Isn't that true? I guess that isn't new either, that the fascists and the authoritarians come after the journalists and jail them for doing their job, in this case offering an opinion even. This is a brief little bit of celebration following Yves' release. Well, that was a very nice little turnout, and Yves gives a wonderful speech there. Some people waiting for hours for Yves to get out of prison, I believe on Monday that was. Now here's a clip from Samira Mohiedin. Let's take a look.
Hi, my name is Bianca Magenyi. I'm Yves' wife and mother of his children, journalist, nonprofit worker, activist, and I live in Montreal. Yeah. So I prepared a statement today. I just want to thank everybody also for just coming out here to support Yves. My husband, Yves Engler, is a dedicated author. He's a father of 2 young children. He's an honorable man, and he's currently being detained under charges that we firmly believe are unjust. And his alleged offense stems from expressing his anti-war positions, his anti-genocide stances, and advocating for Palestinian rights on social media. Notably, Yves has never directly contacted his accuser. Rather, he has consistently championed the importance of open dialogue on critical issues such as Zionism and anti-war activism and just foreign policy. And these are public matters that warrant discussion and not repression.
So that's an excellent video. And again, check out the link. We've got before her, we've got Yves' father, and then I assume lawyer also there on that clip. So check that out. Now, more skullduggery with regards to the authorities, the police, and repression of activists and journalists. This week, exclusive to The Ricochet, RCMP formally apologized for violating journalists' rights, commit to changes in wake of explosive oversight report. So briefly, in 2020, at the height of the pipeline fight on Wet'suwet'en territory, Ricochet journalist Jerome Turner was detained by the RCMP in 2 separate locations for a total of 8 hours as he sought to do his job and cover the story. Yesterday, after a 5-year fight for accountability, the RCMP formally apologized to Turner and his editor. The formal apology, ordered by the commissioner of the RCMP, was one of a series of recommendations in a scathing 70-page report. The CRCC report covered here for the first time. So check that out at Ricochet News. This document is sure to serve as a keystone of press freedom in Canada for years to come and influence future decisions around violation of journalists' rights. And then they detail a few other examples of journalists' rights being abused and wrongdoing by the police in that regard. So check that out by the Ricochet News. Now, another Canadian in the news a lot lately is Charlie Angus, NDP MP from Northern Ontario. And he's become a darling for standing up to Trump and giving him the what's what. So let's give a quick little listen to Charlie.
What you have taught me is that Canadians will never bend in the face of tyranny. That is our story. And I am so proud to be part of the telling of that story today, as we are all part of this fight of resistance. I want to send a special message as well to our friends in the United States who've been reaching out. In your own country, find that wellspring of incredible American independence and love of liberty. We are going to have to do this together. Nobody's coming to save us. It's going to be ordinary people standing up in the face of this new dark age, kicking at the darkness until it bleeds daylight. We can do this. We will do this. There is no alternative, because we will never kiss the ring of that gangster regime. So stay strong.
Okay, now with regards to everything that is going on, people are organizing, they're getting active, and there's a bunch of discussions, what's working, what will work, what won't work, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, etc., etc. This from Rupture Press. I believe this person is taking an anarchistic perspective and viewpoint on what's happening and what should happen. It's a long read. I thought that I had something clipped out from it, but maybe I have not. Oh my goodness. I guess you'll have to take my word for it. Let's go with the last paragraph. This situation is anything but decided. As the state degrades and as conflict expands, we do have the ability to overwhelm the state's ability to contain these conflicts, but only to the degree that we fundamentally realign our approach to resistance and the strategic horizons it reaches towards. In a nutshell, we need to rethink our strategies. Maybe business as usual with regards to resistance isn't going to cut it this time around. We might have to amp up those efforts. With regards to that, from, what's that, Boyle Heights Beat. Must have come across this on the socials by Andrew Lopez and Alejandra Molina, February 21st. With radios and megaphones, volunteers patrol LA streets to warn communities of ICE activity. Now, this is fantastic. People organizing to help their fellow citizens. The team is preparing for a shift spent scouting the streets for signs of suspicious activity. They're not security guards, law enforcement, or even the neighborhood watch. Carrasco and Gochez, both educators in the LA area and activists with Union del Barrio, are part of a volunteer network of residents patrolling the streets of Southern California, from South Central to the East Side. Their mission is simple yet critical: to warn communities of any potential U.S. immigration and customs enforcement activity, offering a line of defense for families at risk of deportation. They're out in the streets to remind their neighbors they have their back. So that is an excellent story of a little bit of resistance, people helping each other, looking out for one another, warning each other, educating each other about their rights, and essentially doing everything that they can to fight back against this authoritarian regime which has taken place. Okay, a little bit of a jump shift here, away from that into something, I guess, cultural, musical, a little lighter. Newport Music Festival announces their 2025 John Prine Songwriter Fellowship recipient will be Jesse Wells. Friend of the show here, put on a few of his songs. He's doing great work, and I think besides my friend David Rovics, Jesse Wells has his finger on the pulse, coming up with fresh stuff nearly every week with regards to stuff that's going on. So good for him. Okay, a little bit of citizen activism. This come off the socials by Dr. Genevieve Gunther, climate scientist and activist, I do believe, reposting somebody with stickers highlighting the price of eggs. Fun with stickers. And you can learn about different fun actions. The sticker one kind of reminds me of some of the ones that I was reading out the other day. In my ongoing series of reading, An Action a Day Keeps Global Capitalism Away. So check that out if you're also looking for ideas on how to be active and creative and be part of the resistance, if you will. Okay. A little clip from RFK. So, trigger warning, this is dealing with COVID, and RFK, he's an accused vax denier. No, what's the word for it? Anti-vaxxer. He's been accused of being anti-vaxxer. I think he's vaccine skeptical. I don't know. Let's just take a look at this clip and see if we can figure out what he's saying here.
He says that's because we're the sickest people in the world. They say that the average American who died from COVID had 3.8 chronic diseases. So were they dying from COVID or were they dying from chronic disease?
RFK Jr. asked that question. The poster here, Kelly, says COVID. They died from COVID. And using this as an example of escalating eugenics. Basically the argument, and I think that argument we're familiar with since the beginning of the pandemic, was that the only people that are dying have pre-existing conditions, or they're old, or they were sick, and they were just going to die anyway, so we shouldn't shut down all of society and do all of those things that we did when it isn't as severe as we thought that it was. So that was one part of the argument. And now what RFK Jr. is I believe, it's out of context. It's only a 20-second clip here. He's trying to keep two things in mind at the same time, and this is an example of where more than one thing can be true. Okay, yes, a person could have COVID. Yes, a person could have pre-existing condition. Both of those things could combine and result in a person's untimely demise or worsening illnesses. Okay, but these are co-factors. Okay. Right, one might cause problems, the other might cause problems. Together, we could see even greater problems being created. So it's not fair to, I think, take these things out of context and immediately assume that RFK is a eugenicist or completely against any of the measures that we've taken, although he is, I think, admittedly against many of them, including the shots and the lockdowns and these types of things. So I don't know, just something to keep in mind, that things get polarized very easily, right? So the way the argument was shaped up is you're either with us or against us. You're either pro science and what the party line was with regards to the pandemic, or you're a tinfoil hat wearing anti-science person. Trucker, MAGA, whatever, right? So you're either in one camp or the other. And what I'd like to see is an opening up of more space in the middle so that we can talk about both of these things that might be true at the same time, and what other things are we not talking about in a very important discussion on one of the largest global events to have happened in recent memory. Does that make sense? Okay, speaking of large global events, climate change is a pretty massive problem, like a wicked problem, as they say. And this from Earth.com, massive new source of leaking methane gas emissions discovered. Researchers have now uncovered an unexpected and significant source of methane emissions. Researchers have discovered that Arctic glaciers are not as innocent as they may seem. These glaciers are leaking substantial amounts of methane into the atmosphere. This methane is geologic in origin and is released as the glacier retreats and glacial meltwater flushes through fractures in the rock. The source of this methane was not microbial activity. Instead, the methane originated from ancient geological formations and had been trapped in the region for millions of years. So methane is a huge problem, and those of us interested in climate change and talking about it and researching it and writing it, think of methane as being released from the permafrost and from rotting vegetation, from landfills, cow farts, that kind of thing. And it's a huge problem. And as the planet warms, obviously the poles warm, and that's going to release more methane out of the peat bogs and permafrost areas, right? Methane also bubbling up from the bottom of the ocean, the methane hydrates bubbling up, getting up into the atmosphere. But now here is another source, another space where methane is coming loose after being locked away for millions of years. And it's said that not only is it more potent, but it's also a very fast-acting greenhouse gas. And all of these things feed into the climate loop. So the climate feedback loop explained here. As they shrink, meaning the glaciers, as they shrink, more methane could be released, setting up what scientists call a positive feedback loop, where warming accelerates glacial melting, setting free more methane, which then intensifies warming and further melting, and so on, and so on, and so on. Once again, those feedback loops, they're gonna get you. With regards to feedback loops and ice and climate change, this one from New Scientist, also in the last week, February 19th, dark algae could accelerate melting of Greenland ice sheet, grow on exposed ice in the Arctic as the snow line recedes, raising concern of a feedback loop. Uh-oh. The blooms darken the ice, reducing its reflectivity and absorbing more heat, thereby enhancing melt in these areas by an estimated 10 to 13%. Global warming is already causing the snow line to retreat to increased altitudes over time, exposing more ice, which is less reflective than snow, and therefore accelerates melt. Ice algae add yet another layer to these interactions that will need to be accounted for in future climate projections. So the climate projections that we have on the books from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, and other leading scientists and climate organizations perhaps need to add some more variables to figuring out where we're going to end up with that. Okay, this Friday coming up, the U.S. economic blackout. No corporate spending. I'm sure you've seen this on your socials or people are talking about it. So it's a movement across the United States, which is really, really nice. I just simply, on Ecosia, I just simply typed in F28 resist. All kinds of mainstream news articles, Newsweek, USA Today, CBS News, Axios, Fast Company, Newsweek, Yahoo, Jacksonville, Times Now News. So there's a lot of news in the United States with regards to that. And then when I added Canada to that search, the first Canadian news outlet I came across is Kelowna Now, and it just simply mentions that it's gaining momentum on both sides of the borders, but for different reasons. Canadians have hopped on the bandwagon and will be using Boycott Day as a way to shun American retailers. Sorry, it's so big, moving so fast. The boycott of American brands in Canada is not so much protesting DEI rollbacks as it is about striking back at Trump for threatening 25% tariffs and 50 first state jabs. So Canadians aren't too happy about all that, and we are getting on board with the February 28th blackout. Here's a little notice posted just this morning from Professor Elliot Jacobson saying, why don't we do this every Friday? This is my Facebook page. I'm celebrating February 28th as the day that I ditch this crappy platform, Facebook. So I'm just letting my followers and friends know that it's my final notice. I've been trying to let people know for a week or two. I'll be disappearing from that site, and that they should maybe take some effort in contacting me. Now, that was slow going because, as you know, Facebook is just stupid. It just doesn't show your stuff to everybody all the time. So after several notices, I still wasn't getting some friends and family. So what I ended up doing is just sending a message to the most important family members saying, look, I'm out of here. Here's my email and phone number. If you want to reach me, that's how you can do it. If you're formerly on my Facebook and you missed all that, well, you found me here. You can find my contact somehow, reach out to me in the DMs or the comments or follow my link tree or whatever. Okay, I think that's everything for today. That's not bad, 32 minutes. Okay, here is What's Going On Here, Montreal, a remix by David Rovics. I want to take an opportunity just to say thank you for watching the show. Be sure to like and subscribe, tell a friend. If you have any suggestions, please do let me know. I'd be happy to bring it up. Shout out to Matthew for his suggestion for the Majorana 1, the new potentially quantum computing chip by Microsoft. My thanks to everyone else who tunes in, 3 or 4 of you out there. No, seriously, I'm very much appreciative of that. If you have something, don't text me or email me. Write a comment down in the comments. It honestly really helps, and it helps other people see that people are interacting. And if you're shy to interact, the best way to do it is with a small channel like this, because we're going to see it. You know, there is one or none comments, and we'll probably comment on that. So thanks again. Here's David Rovics to take us out.
Page on X, I too am outraged indeed. And that's what happened to Yves, and so he posted a reply. And now he's been arrested, and we'd like to know why. What's going on here, Montreal? It's anybody's guess. Seems the cops are taking orders from Jerusalem, and they've come to imprison the press. Who is Dahlia Kurtz? And who decided that we should see the horrid stuff she posts on the top of my feed? And when did freedom of speech get fed to the cats? And how many of you out there didn't think you lived in a country like that? What's going on here, Montreal? It's anybody's guess. Seems the cops are taking orders from Jerusalem, and they've come to imprison the press. What's going on here, Montreal? It's anybody's guess. Seems the cops are taking orders from Jerusalem, and they've come to imprison the press. Seems the cops are taking orders from Jerusalem.
David Rovics, What's Going On Here, Montreal? Remix. Check him out. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you around. Bye.